Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS NBA Saturday. Just one game. We got a brand new series starting. Second round of the Western Conference playoffs. Minnesota on the road in Denver for game one. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the SWUS. The SWUS. SWUS. Hey, get the SWUS.
All right, so like I said, game one, Minnesota's on the road in Denver. Nuggets are laying 4.5 points at home. Total sitting at 207.5. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, the final score of this game should be 114-111 Nuggets. Injuries and inactives, and we'll start with Minnesota, and we got nobody. Nobody on the injury report for the T-Wolves at this time, so Minnesota should be at full strength here. On the Denver side, we got Jamal Murray on the report listed as questionable. Obviously, that's a huge one. We know how much he means to this Denver team, especially in the playoffs, so we'll have to wait and see with him. So yeah, let's take a look at this series, and why don't we start with the head-to-head matchups this season. These two teams met 4 times. They split 2-2 on the season. They also split home away, 1-1 in Minnesota, 1-1 in Denver. Minnesota was 3-1 against the spread against the Nuggets, so one of the T-Wolves losses, they did cover the number. Obviously, a huge matchup in this series is Jokic against the Minnesota interior defense. Minnesota was first in defensive efficiency at the rim this year, and you got arguably the best center, maybe the best player in the NBA in Jokic, and this season he was pretty good against Minnesota, averaging over 33 points per game, 11.8 rebounds per game, just 4.3 assists per game. That's a little low for him, shooting over 58% from the floor. So Jokic was fine this year in the games against Minnesota. And to be honest, I don't know how much faith I have in the Minnesota defense. I know in the regular season they were one of, if not the best defense in the NBA, but in that series against Phoenix, yeah, they swept them, but it wasn't the defense. Amongst playoff teams this year, so this year in the playoffs, Minnesota's 8th in defensive efficiency, 12th in defensive effective field goal percentage, and 10th in defensive efficiency at the rim. These 3 ranks are out of the 16 playoff games in playoff action only. So they swept the Suns, but it wasn't really their defense that did the sweeping. Phoenix as a team shot 46.5% from the floor and 36.5% from 3. That's not bad. Suns offense actually played pretty well in that series. Both of these numbers right here, the Phoenix shooting numbers, they're both better than how Denver shot against the Lakers in their series. So Minnesota's defense really didn't show out in that Suns series. It was their offense. And what makes the matchup even more interesting here is that the Suns did most of their damage from inside the three-point line. 65.7% of the Suns' field goal attempts were 2-point field goal attempts. That's the most out of any team in the playoffs. The reason I bring that up, this Denver offense lives on scoring inside the three-point line. They don't have much of an outside shooting presence. 56.3% of the Denver Nuggets points this year come from 2-point field goals. That's the most in the NBA. And in the playoffs, it's even more than that. Over 58% of the Nuggets points are coming from 2 points. So I know Minnesota is branded as this elite defense based on what they did in the regular season, and I completely understand, but that's not really what we saw in the series against the Suns. In fact, the Suns offense played pretty well. And I know you can look at Jamal Murray's numbers against Minnesota this year. He's played in 3 games, averaging just 17.3 points per game on 44% field goals. But here's the thing with Jamal Murray. I mean, regular season Jamal Murray and playoff Jamal Murray are completely different. It's kind of got that Jimmy Butler factor to him. In fact, look at his regular season playoff splits. This is over the course of his career. He's averaging 7.4 more points per game in the playoffs, 2 more assists per game, 1.3 more rebounds per game. I mean, Jamal Murray in the playoffs is a different kind of problem. So I don't think Jamal Murray's stats against Minnesota during the regular season should really even be considered here. The fast break will probably not be there for Denver. Minnesota plays great defense in transition, 10th and 5th in frequency and efficiency on the regular season. But here's the thing, Denver doesn't need to run the fast break. In fact, they rarely ever run it. I think they're 22nd and 23rd. Denver's more than comfortable running their offense out of the half court. So I think Denver's going to score points. I actually like the matchup for the Nuggets offense here. I think Denver's going to score points. But here's the thing. I'm worried about the matchup on the other side of the court for Denver. I'm worried about the Nuggets defense because look what the Lakers did in that series. 49.2% from the floor. That's what the Lakers shot in that series. Sure, the Nuggets knocked them out in 5 games, but the Lakers shot over 49% from the floor. That's first in the NBA. No NBA team in the playoffs this year shot this high. Lakers were first in field goal percentage in the playoffs. 65.2% of their shots were 2-point field goals. The reason I bring that up Minnesota's offense looked great, and they looked great inside the three-point line. That Minnesota offense was looking absolutely unstoppable. Anthony Edwards, as I'm sure you've heard a million times, is playing on another planet right now. He's averaging 31 a game in that Phoenix series, shooting over 51% from the floor, almost 44% from three. This Minnesota Timberwolves team, which during the regular season was a defensive team that had an average to slightly below average offense, in this postseason, they're first in offensive efficiency and first in points per game. This was the best offense in the first round of the playoffs. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. What was the problem for Minnesota in the playoffs the last couple years on the offensive side of the ball? Karl Anthony Towns trying to do too much. Well, Karl Anthony Towns is not trying to do too much. He just came back from injury a couple weeks ago. He's averaging over 19 points per game, shooting 53% from the floor, 52.9% from three. If he's going to assume the number 2 scorer role with Anthony Edwards playing the way he is, Minnesota's offense might be one of the best in the playoffs. And my assessment that Minnesota has a good defense, that we can't really trust this offense, was so blatantly wrong. Now, I know what you're probably thinking right now. Well, Kyle, that was against the Phoenix Suns defense. Denver's a different story. Well, let's compare Phoenix and Denver defensively. Since the All-Star break, these two teams are pretty close. In defensive efficiency, 8th and 4th. In defensive effective field goal percentage, 4th and 1st. Look at defensive rebounding, 3rd and 18th since the All-Star break. And actually, let's take a closer look at the rebounding numbers between Phoenix and Denver. Actually, you can make an argument that Phoenix is the better rebounding team. 8th to 6th on the season, 18th to 13th on the defensive side of the ball. Since the All-Star break, Phoenix has been slightly better. The point I'm making is Phoenix and Denver, as far as rebounding goes, they're very comparable. Why am I bringing that up? Because look what Minnesota did to Phoenix on the glass in this series. This was an absolute bullying down low. 46.3 rebounds per game to 32.5. 13.8 to 7.3 offensive. 32.5 to 25.3 defensive. This was an absolute slaughtering down low by the Minnesota Timberwolves. Look at this graphic here. This has the biggest rebounding discrepancies in the first round of the playoffs. Minnesota bullied the Suns more than Boston even bullied Miami. I mean, plus 12.8. No one else was really close to that. So the point I'm making is what Minnesota just did to Phoenix made their defense look terrible and absolutely dominated them on the boards. And then you take a look and see that Phoenix and Denver defensively and rebounding wise are actually pretty comparable. It's got to be worrisome if you're a Denver Nuggets fan, which brings me to my overall opinion of this series. Denver can definitely score on Minnesota. I am not worried about the Nuggets offense, but I think Minnesota can score points right back, and I actually think Minnesota is going to win the battle on the glass. As long as the Timberwolves can protect the basketball, this series should be a back-and-forth battle. So I am taking Minnesota plus 4.5 in Game 1. I'm also definitely playing the over. In fact, the over is probably my favorite bet. I definitely like the over here. I'm also taking the points with the T-Wolves. I also have a same-game parlay for this game that I built out, but I'll post that on the website. Live show, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. We got 15 MLB games, and, of course, this game I'll get some guests on, do what we always do. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. If you want my top bets or same-game parlays or top bets from anyone on the staff here, any of that, head over to KyleKirms.com. They're posted right on the website. There's also a link to join the Discord if you're interested. Let's have ourselves a great weekend. I'm recording this on Friday evening. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, we had a great Friday night. I got a lot of bets open. So hopefully we had a good one. Remember to bet responsibly, and I'll talk to you in the Discord.